Hello, everybody. So, I have been involved in the vegetable seed industry for quite a few years, since 2009. And I was with a company that we retailed vegetable seed to growers, home gardeners, to the retail public. And doing that, I was the purchaser for the company. I bought in all the seed. Over the years, we started offering more open pollinated. We sold both open pollinated and hybrid seed. Started offering more open pollinated and heirloom seed to our customers, and they were a real hit. People liked them. And in the past few years, I want to say in the last 5 or 6 years, these started being very hard to get. Very hard to get or impossible to get, and pretty much 90% of what we were buying was grown in Asia or grown by corporations based in Asia. So I kind of got this vision of having this open pollinated heirloom seed grown by our own people in our communities, and started dabbling a little with it. Did not realize that there are already people in other communities involved in it. And in the meantime, I had started my own small business. As that grew, I started working at home, and I discontinued working with the seed company. So my dreams and my visions kind of came to a stop because I had put all my money, invested my money into my other business, and I had to pursue that. Then in a series of kind of unexpected events, I got connected with SAS here, and they basically got excited about the vision and helped me take it from there. So that's where we have taken it.
So I was going to mention with that Emanuel has a greenhouse, and so he has a lot of experience on that end of the spectrum. So Emanuel, a bunch of questions for you, and we will do a Q&A at the end. I'm hoping that we can cover a lot of your questions in the meantime. So what brought to your mind the need for community grown seed? If this is important, why haven't we been doing more of it?
So I just mentioned partly what brought it to my mind, what I was involved with, and the difficulty of procuring the seed. And it was not only the difficulty, like I mentioned, the company started dropping seed varieties that home gardeners liked. It was also the fact that a huge percentage of the seed was not grown locally. It wasn't adapted to our growing region. Second, and this escalated a lot post-COVID, a lot of the seed that we were buying, open pollinated heirloom seed, we were having issues with them being not true to type. We would get in whole batches or whole lots of seed and disperse them among our customers, and we'd be flooded with complaints. This is not a beefsteak tomato, or this is not a Blue Lake bean. It is either a mutation or a variant or something completely different. This is just my assumption. We believe that the growing practices wherever these were being grown, they were being careless with isolation, and the genetics weren't being kept pure. And obviously, if you do that for a few generations in a seed crop, it will multiply, and pretty soon you don't even have what you originally started with. So at the time when I had this vision, I didn't know there were other people doing this. I have found out that there are individuals and communities that have pure seed stock, locally grown, and it is available in our area. So that's what brought it to my mind. Is it important? I believe it is, for several reasons. So if we go back in history a little bit, until fairly recently, and I say recently without knowing exactly the time frame because it was before my day, but I want to say fairly recently in the bigger scope of agriculture, growing and saving your own seed was an important part of all agriculture and all agricultural societies. It was simply something farmers did to ensure that they could plant a crop the following year, be it corn, wheat, oats, or vegetable and garden seeds. Vegetable and garden seeds is more the focus of what I'm talking about, because that's what I'm experienced in. But a lot of these ideas apply to crop seeds as well. My own grandfather saved his own seed, resaved, planted and grew his own crops until, I want to say, the 80s, when commercialized seed was all of a sudden just cheaper, was easier to buy and less hassle. You didn't have to mess with saving your own or producing it. So if our ancestors were involved in agriculture, they were obviously involved in seed, not because it was optional, but because it was their food source. If they didn't have seed to plant, they didn't have a crop to grow. Obviously, I believe our ancestors would have shared with each other, and they would have compromised. But in this day and age, saving seeds is optional. We can go buy seed anywhere. Will it always be so? We don't know. I personally think that saving seeds is something that we have a responsibility to know, that we have at least know the art and practice it, know what we would be doing if we would suddenly be responsible to be saving our own seeds again. Saving seeds is not really a new concept. That's my first reason for believing it is important. The second reason is there are big players in the seed industry who have ambitious goals of controlling the seed market. Anyone who has control of the seed market, as you know, ultimately controls our food supply. And I don't say that because I think that it is something to be fearful about, but we don't need to panic about it. But it isn't common sense to stick our heads in the sand and pretend nothing is happening either. I have a chart here that you can pick up if there's any left. I believe there's some there yet. And there's an updated one online that I didn't have the ability to print off. But on that chart, which is put together by somebody from Michigan State University, it states that 4 companies today produce or control over 60% of the world's seed supply. That includes grains and crops and everything. 3 of those 4 companies produce over 60% of the vegetable seed supply. That is a seriously tight conglomeration. So, ensuring that we have ample seed stock in our communities and the knowledge of how to continue renewing that seed stock, be it through just saving and resaving open pollinated seed, or knowing the science of hybridizing and dehybridizing, shouldn't be looked on as an act of fear. It's just a rewarding choice that we make to provide for us and our families, and taking one step back out of that dependency on others, and one step closer to knowing one more of those homesteading skills that we have neglected in the past decades. I myself am I enjoy homesteading a lot more than just saving seeds, and I think we have lost a lot of skills, a lot of basic skills that our ancestors, even 50 or 60 years ago, knew how to do well. So I don't see the most important part of growing our own seed, of knowing the art of it, isn't necessarily just having tons of seed in a bank somewhere that we can fall back on in case of emergencies. I see seed banks as being a valuable part of it, and a valuable asset to our communities. But the most important part is first just knowing the art of saving seeds and having seeds in circulation, planting them, saving them, sharing them, selecting for good traits, improving the genetics that we have. As long as that's happening, as long as these many varieties that we still have are being produced and improved, we will have seed. And then we can use seed banks for backup, not just having a seed bank somewhere to lost my track of mind there, but we should have options in our communities other than just supporting these corporate agri companies who supply us with patented hybrids and there are a host of genetically modified crops that we can't reproduce.
Okay, you've been talking about open pollinated, heirloom, hybrid, GMO. Can you unpack a little bit the difference between those seeds?
So most of those terms, open pollinated, heirloom, hybrid, GMO, are frequently confused and possibly misused by consumers. And heirloom is translated sometimes differently by different seed companies. But heirlooms are generally open pollinated varieties that have been known of or in cultivation for longer than 50 years. They have generally excelled in one way or the other as they have stood the test of time, and usually that's exceptional eating quality or size or other unique features. They generally don't store that well, don't ship well, and some varieties don't have the disease resistance that hybrids do. Most commercial growers prefer hybrids over open pollinators for those specific reasons. They want a shippable product and they want one with disease resistance. Heirlooms are always open pollinated. Open pollinated refers to varieties that reproduce true to type and can be saved, reproduced year after year, selecting for desirable traits. You can improve an open pollinated variety just by selecting from traits that you see in that plant that you want. There are many open pollinated varieties that aren't considered heirlooms if they've been produced in recent years. Hybrids are crosses between open pollinated varieties of the same species. And like I said, they're generally bred for improved yield, appearance, shippability, other desirable traits. I personally don't believe that hybrids are just totally wrong in themselves. Hybrids may have their place. They have certainly exhibited some traits that we don't yet have in open pollinated varieties, but I have really wondered, and this is just an assumption of mine as I've done this, been working with it over the years, I've really wondered what would have happened or what would happen if we would be as diligent in working and improving the open pollinated and heirloom genetics that are available to us as we are diligent in improving our dairy herd or our beef herd or the horses we drive. That would apply to us Amish mostly, but I personally believe if we would have been as diligent in that, we could have ruled out a lot of the needs for hybrid seed. Hybrid seed came out in close to the same times as a lot of the chemicals did. Chemicals ruined the soil, in my opinion, and they created disease problems which we now needed to create hybrids for. The vicious cycle continues. Newer, more improved hybrids to resist newer, more intense diseases. Another problem with hybrids that I have is that you have total reliance on the company that is producing or owns the right to the seed. You can't save and replant hybrid seed. It will revert to one or the other parent. GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. I do not pretend to be an expert on genetically modified organisms or the entire science behind it. It's often referred to as just GM or bioengineered. They are made, genetically modified crops are made by introducing foreign genes from one species into an entirely different species to gain a trait that is not normal for the species it was introduced into, like herbicide tolerance in corn. And like I said, I don't have too much more input on genetically modified crops. I don't think I would like to echo Henry's thoughts of what he was in the other room yesterday about the value of genetically modified crops in nutritionally. I don't think they're worth anything nutritionally, but he kind of covered that, and I think the information that he gave was very accurate. Currently, 96% of the corn, soybeans, and cotton grown in the U.S. are genetically modified.
So what's the goal of Sowers Seeds and the vision behind it?
Okay, so you read us our vision yesterday, but there might be people here. I'm going to read that vision, the mission, and the purpose again. I think I have it here. It's in the brochure. Yes. So pick up a brochure before you leave. So the vision of Sowers Seeds is to see our Anabaptist communities return to the art of saving our own seeds, to produce our own seed, to share with each other, and to have growers that are dedicated to selecting and improving the many genetics that are available to us, open pollinated and heirloom. Our mission is to teach. We want to teach people why to save seed and how to save seed, and to operate as a central hub, connecting seed growers with each other and with a market for their seed. Our purpose is to supply our communities with pure seed stock as needed and to serve as an outlet for the seed grown by members. We want to maintain seed banks in numerous areas with adequate seed supply to accommodate us in cases of crop failures or severe seed shortages. And there are, like I mentioned already, numerous individuals and communities involved in this work that have been involved for quite a while already and have made headways into this project. And we are hoping to work with those people and to support them. And
so you say there's other communities and others already saving seeds and doing this, so is Sowers Seeds going to compete with them, or how is Sowers Seeds going to be different from the others that are already doing this?
I guess, so how are we going to be different? Our first mission is education. Our mission is to educate the people why to save seed and how to save seed. If we get to the point where seed supply is a problem, globally we do need seeds, it will be more of an asset to us to know how to save our own seeds than it will be to have tons of seed in the seed bank. If we have enough seed in a bank to last us 5 years, and we have no idea how to reproduce it because we just bought it and stuck it there in case of emergency, once it runs out, we're no better off than we were. So how we're going to be different, that's our first mission, is education. There's other Anabaptist people that are involved, and possibly non-Anabaptist as well, that I believe share that vision and share that mission, and we want to work with those. As well, there are still a number of reputable seed companies out there that sell open pollinated and heirloom seeds, and they do a good job of carrying pure seed. There's a number of them that I would support. But if you've been watching the seed industry for the past 10 or 15 years, you'll soon see the problem with relying only on these. These companies are facing a lot of pressure from these corporate giants. And I have personally watched many of them folding or selling out or compromising on their values. By compromising on their values, I have seen several companies start out selling only open pollinated heirloom seed with a vision of promoting that kind of work, and now they are selling seeds right down to genetically modified seed. They're selling seeds from places like Syngenta, Dow, DuPont. Not saying that, once again, that there is no place for those hybrid seeds, but what these companies are facing is this pressure to carry this seed, this pressure to compromise on their values. And when the time comes when the big corporate agro companies come in and want to change the way things are done, those companies aren't going to have anything to stand on to hold back and to continue supplying us with seed like they are doing now. There have to be values and goals that run deeper than just selling seeds.
So what should or what can the average person in our communities be doing to assist with this vision?
Well, first and foremost, learn the art of saving seeds. That's my opinion. There might already be many of you that do it, and that's great. Saving seeds is not a complex thing that only a certain set of farmers can learn how to do. It's not something that we have to let chemical companies do because they're the ones that know how. There are varieties that are easier than others. By varieties, I mean species. I would strongly encourage anyone to take the time, especially if you already have a garden, experiment, learn how to do it. Start with something easy like beans or tomatoes. Saving seeds is so easy, it's so rewarding, even if you do it just for your own use. Growing a crop from seed and knowing that you had no input into this except your own time and labor, and watching it grow and produce another crop is, to me, amazing and miraculous. The second way, if you want to be more involved, is to take it a step further and share your seeds. Share your seeds with others, be it on your own, with your neighbors, your family, your friends, or through our exchange with Sowers Seeds. We hope to have an exchange where members can freely exchange seed among themselves. Sharing seeds, other than just growing them for your own, results in it has several benefits. It results in unique and hard to find varieties that have beneficial properties or unique features. Get better circulation than if one family just knows that I have this tomato that is just awesome and I've been saving seed for years. Unless we have a selfish attitude, and I don't believe any of us do, seeds like that deserve more circulation. And it is better to keep those varieties alive. That way, if somebody has a crop failure, those seeds are somewhere else. Our ancestors sharing their seeds across hundreds and hundreds of years and selecting and improving what they had and selecting from different sports and mutations is what has given us this extensive array of varieties that we now have. One more way, well, there's probably several more, but another way that you could help with the vision is to be actively involved with Sowers Seeds. We are looking for people that actually want to grow some seed for us to supply to other people. I have been amazed already since we started this and have been in contact with people at the overwhelmingly positive response we've gotten. And I really wish to thank everybody here for that, and anybody that has given us positive response that's not here. But to take Sowers Seeds to the next step, we're going to need active support in growing seeds and purchasing seeds, in dedicating to improving varieties that we have.
So another question is, what are we projecting that Sowers Seeds is looking to do in the next 2 years? And the seed that is growing, what are we going to do with the seed that we grow, and how can you buy it, or how are we going to distribute it, etc.?
So our hope and our goal, our vision is to see seed grown this summer. We have a number of growers that are interested in growing seed for us. We hope to have a number more. We hope to have seed to sell this fall, this winter, for next spring. Like stated, our first goal is education, not necessarily seed sales, but seed sales. We hope to see seed sales supporting our mission, supporting Sowers Seeds in our mission of education. So our goal is to have seeds to sell from this project this fall, this winter. And we hope to add more varieties as time goes on. We will be selling seed retail to the general public. We hope to have some bulk seed for sale, although that's not our focus is not selling bulk seeds and volume. Our focus is selling to gardeners. We also want to have seed rack sales to put in ag businesses or greenhouses, garden centers, to distribute more seed. I guess I don't have a lot of notes about the rest of that question, so maybe you could fill in anything you think needs to be filled in.
Thanks, Emanuel. I think you did good on that. So we are asking for anybody that to go to your local greenhouse, garden center, ag, and we would like a seed rack retail in every community, and it could be several in some communities. And we have plenty of brochures here. If you're interested in helping, take some along home, pass them out, and our contact info is on there. They can contact us. But a concern that we have, or our focus, is to keep it in education as much as possible. So we are not looking at producing volume, but we want to do enough to know, have experience, and know what we're doing, and educate people on how to do it. So, any questions?
I have a burning question with this. I didn't hear anything addressed about the advantage of growing your seed that you grew in your garden again another year. Is there any research that has been done to show that replanting your own seeds from your own soil in your own garden is an advantage? The reason I ask this question is I used to grow open pollinated corn first couple of years. I confess I shed some tears over that corn, but I did find that the open pollinated corn tested about 3 to 4% higher in protein than hybrid corn. Plus, when I kept it in a cup for several years, the hybrid corn shriveled up and molded. The open pollinated just stayed as clean as can be. So why aren't we talking about that advantage?
So I think there is an advantage. I don't pretend to be the expert that can tell you everything about it. I know that there's an advantage in what I call geographic adaptation, adapting to your local climate. So this applies to almost any plant life. If I buy tomato seeds that have been grown for several generations in Florida, and I take those same seeds to Wisconsin and I plant them, that's not necessarily the best idea. You can do that, and then you can take the crop that you did get and select and reselect, and you can adapt that variety to your local climate as well as possible. But you have a very good question, and there's probably somebody here in the room that can answer it better than I. And if there is, you just go ahead and stick up your hand and answer it. I'd be happy to hear the answer. No volunteers.
We are still learning.
I'm wondering about how far to isolate plants from each other if you want to save your own seed.
Isolation for seed saving.
So every species is different. Some of them you can plant fairly close together. Tomatoes, you can basically, as long as you have a little bit of a barrier with them, you can plant them 10 to 20 feet apart, and they're considered isolated. Corn is on the opposite end of the spectrum. It has to be isolated. If you don't have any barriers like a strip of woods or a major hill, it has to be isolated for over a mile or several miles for pollen drift. If you have a wood strip, a heavy wood strip, or a major hill, you can do less than a mile, but everything ranges in that spectrum. That information is all, there's several books on it. We have a seed to seed book. It's all in there.
Thank you. Something that has hit the news, the national, maybe international news recently, within the past 6 months, something like that. It was in this country, I can't tell you where, but a man had a bowl in his house. I think he kept it on his mantle, and it was supposedly very old. It was passed down generation to generation. And when he'd shake it, he knew there was something inside of it, but he was always just really scared to open it up. It was an heirloom, and he felt like he was almost violating it if he would open it. But somehow or another, a crack developed in the bowl, and he thought, okay, this is it. I gotta find out what's in here. And it was an ancient variety of corn that the Indians in the Southwest had apparently grown, and this was saved from many, 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 many years ago. And so this corn has been tested now, and it's amazing. It can produce its own nitrogen. It stands up out of the soil and exudes this milk, a kind of it's a liquid that comes out of the roots, and it's sweet, and it apparently attracts these types of bacteria that produce nitrogen. And it just this stuff kind of flows down to the roots where this nitrogen then will go into the corn plant. And there's a lot of excitement about this really ancient variety of corn that it can really reduce or maybe eliminate some kinds of fertilizer.
That's interesting. I myself have always been interested with the ancient varieties that Indians or Native Americans, Native South Americans grew, corn, beans, and squash, and others.
I've got a comment I'd like to make on GMOs. One side of it is, since GMOs are being eaten, the number of Americans with glyphosate in their digestive tract is getting close to 100%, because it can be sprayed right up till harvest. The GMO corn or whatever resists it. And another thing, I get some behind the scenes, you might say, newsletters, and one of them reported some time ago of one of the big companies, I think it was Monsanto, made a study to prove that their corn was safe. They fed lab animals for 90 days with, they told what strain of corn they fed them, and they reported they did quite well. Then some independent researchers took the same lab animals and the same corn and fed them for 200 days. At the end of the third generation, the lab animals were so scrawny They lost their fertility. They no longer reproduced. They didn't report this, but I saw, then later I saw from other sources, the fertility of the American population is in a nosedive. We're approximately in the second generation. That's just a warning about GMOs. I think we should connect dots and do something to stay out of that trap.
I think that's very important.
So what is the simplest, most effective way of storing seeds, saving seeds? In other words, how do you keep it long term, especially in a hot climate?
Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of different ways of saving them. The ways that I know of that people use to store seed for very long periods of time successfully is first freeze drying, or flash freezing. I said that wrong. Flash freezing, then vacuum sealing, then deep freezing. They do those over a small period of time, do those three. They store seeds like that for very long periods of time. Obviously, some seeds can be stored longer than others, but I know they have stored seed like that for hundreds of years and had viable seed at the end of that time. But how effectively that can be short term, the simplest way is just freezing. First, taking all moisture out and then freezing. Letting your seed dry to the proper moisture content. Some of them are different than others. That's a technique that you might want to read up on. I'm not sure what the moisture content should be on all seeds, but freezing is probably the most common, most effective way.
One more question.
Are there examples of genetics that were hobby genetics at one time became mainstream later? Do you have examples of that or no?
I know there's been some, but I think of one example, not necessarily a hobby that turned mainstream, but one story that I have always liked and always stuck out to me was the Russian Mennonite farmers bringing their red wheat seed from the old world to the new world and basically changing the wheat world in North America. I don't know this for a fact, but I have heard that the quantity of seed that they brought was very small and insignificant. It had to be. They couldn't, at the time they were immigrating, they couldn't carry bags of seed with them. So specific varieties that are known to us, no, I don't have an answer, but I believe that they are out there.
Thanks, Emanuel. He will be here a little bit, I guess, and there's plenty of info up here and contact info. Connect with Emanuel or myself. If you have questions on how to, Emanuel's going to be a lot better than me, but I'll be happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you, Glenn, and thanks to each of you, especially speakers. It's been a blessing to be here. Thanks to everyone who came. Without each of you, without all the participants, a conference like this really isn't possible. So Glenn asked if I'd make a couple of quick comments. Dale Heisey started out by telling us this. In his talk on incarnational farming, he said, you need to say, as Ruth did, your people shall be my people, if you want them to say, your God shall be my God. Tim Albright said, a wise man is a learner. Only a fool knows everything. And again, he said, the cost of inaction is almost always greater than the cost of a mistake. Are we willing to step out and potentially be fools for Christ? Terry Dalrymple said, you need to set up a prototype that they can own and understand. And again, if we're going to reach the remaining unreached, we need a holistic strategy if we're going to reach those that yet remain unreached. I couldn't agree with that more. Mike Martin talked about learning from, learning with, and being a catalyst. Brian Beachy, you make me want to go back to State College. Where are you? And see if we can add syntropic agroforestry into our 10-year plan. Hector has already been dreaming a little bit about that. Emanuel Kempf said, growing a crop from your own seed and knowing that you had no inputs is truly miraculous and amazing. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Some people might be here that would actually not be ashamed to identify with that narrative. But the book of Revelation does tell us that there will come a time where we can't buy or sell without compromising by joining an ungodly worldly system. I really appreciate the work that Earl and Emanuel have done. My hat is off to them. I think the handwriting's on the wall. These men are looking into the future and saying the time to act is now. Let's stand. We're going to sing a closing verse of song. I'll turn the time to Steve Fisher to have a closing word of prayer. We began by singing, "This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings." We're living in a world that still has some of that original beauty. We're going to close by singing the last verse of that song. I'll line it before we sing together. "This is my Father's world, oh let me ne'er forget, that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world, the battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one." Let's sing together, and then Steve, you can come on up. This is my Father's world, oh let me ne'er forget, that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler